And we have Priscilla Finley here from the libraries, and she is going to be leading a session on strategies for your literature review. I will go ahead and turn it over.
Thank you. So thanks so much for having me today. I'm coming to you from my home in Las Vegas and not from Watkins Glen, New York, which is behind me, but that's my home region. So today I'll be walking you through some of the library resources and some of the folks who can help you design the searching part of your lit review, and I'll also discuss a little bit more about the literature review chapter and how you can structure it. So the literature review chapter or section of a dissertation shows that you're aware of key work in the field. It lets you define where your research question fits in by categorizing and evaluating work that has already been done. So I'll be starting us off today helping you find some places to look for good examples and advice. We'll spend some time on search and how librarians can help, and we'll wrap up by looking at a synthesis matrix as one way of comparing different aspects of a group of studies. I'll also show you a couple of new AI tools that may be able to automate some of that charting work if you find yourself working on a matrix. So the library made a cute video. It's set at a party that we showed to first-year classes. It uses the metaphor research is a conversation. So it's meant to emphasize to new researchers that building knowledge happens in communities of scholars, the party, and you become involved by listening to and drawing from the ongoing conversation. Then you develop good questions and begin to make contributions. So you could think of a lit review in a dissertation as the neighborhood block party, where you are the host. You invite in the experts that you want your work to be in dialogue with, and you get to show off your own research agenda and convince everyone the work is important and interesting and will contribute to the neighborhood. So your lit review could even include a bit of name dropping and flattery as you define the community that you expect will appreciate your research, and that happens when you select the scholars to cite. Being cited, of course, is beneficial to those authors as well as to you. The more a work is cited, the more influential it's considered. There's a whole academic field called bibliometrics that measures the impact of scholarship by looking at where and how often it has been cited. In fact, we have a department in the library that helps faculty tracking their own metrics as well as other publication-related services, like negotiating author rights and planning ways to archive the data that they generate. So in some disciplines, you may find yourself making social or political considerations. What people or labs or organizations do you hope to associate with in the future? Or maybe there are scholars belonging to a community whose work has been historically underrepresented, whose work you'd like to see boosted. It's something to keep in the back of your mind and perhaps discuss with your advisor. As a humanities librarian, I place a lot of value on recognizing researchers as well as focusing on their research outcomes. But I also work with disciplines like English and history, where researchers can be more subjective, and we don't need to be especially transparent about how we select the sources to include in our reviews. Increasingly, disciplines like the health sciences, social sciences, and even education are turning toward more objective, transparent, and rigorous methods to sift through and select relevant research in order to inform evidence-based decisions or policy. I'll do my best to give you an overview of some of the principles and tools that can help you organize and execute a literature review, whatever your field. I'll be including a few more short videos by experts, and I'll demonstrate some resources that you may want to consider for your own work. If you have a phone on you, I have a couple of QR codes coming up in the presentation. So links to these slides and all the databases, videos, and tools that I'll be recommending today are available on the web page linked to the QR code from this slide. The URL is at the bottom. So I'll give you a moment if you want to take out your phone and get a picture of that QR code that will link you to the web page. So I'm the humanities librarian over at Lead Library. I've been doing my best to keep up with tools and techniques for academic workflows. I read lit reviews in disciplines like history and English regularly, but I have less exposure to current practices and expectations in some of your disciplines. Luckily, you also have a subject librarian, Susie Scarl for you social workers and the public policy folks, Sue Wainscott for engineers and computer scientists, Samantha Godby if you're in education, and Zan Goodman for the health sciences. They have helped dozens of PhD candidates build literature reviews, and I urge you to set up a one-on-one consultation with them to discuss your particular research question. I'll be pointing out some specific topics where I know they can advise you as we go through. But I think it goes without saying that your own advisor is the best person to answer specific questions about your literature review. But useful advice comes from many quarters. So the lit review chapter or section of a dissertation is one of those genres of writing that you find yourself needing to produce, but that you may not actually read that often. So you may not have already internalized the structure and the rhetoric of a lit review. Fortunately, there are an abundance of step-by-step guides and manuals and flowcharts and FAQs to support you in this journey. Even more important than that, having concrete examples from your program or from similar ones in front of you can inform your answers to questions like how many sources do I need or how long should it be? So let me show you where you can find resources and examples. All of the databases that I show you are linked from that workshop page. Looks like this. Or you can find them on the A to Z list of databases on the library website. So the library subscribed to SAGE Research Methods, which is a database of material to support and train emerging researchers. It includes lots of case studies, handbooks, and reference materials. Just going to take a quick look. So you can see some of the categories of material. The books and references area includes the Little Green Books and Little Blue Books series. I don't know if you may have run across these manuals for the various quantitative and qualitative methods you might be using. There's also a nifty methods map that lets you browse through definitions and applications of research methods. And there's a little questionnaire that you can take that will match your needs and data to the right statistical test. It also includes video interviews with faculty where they discuss their work, including quite a few about different aspects of literature review in different disciplines. That's actually where I found the book igloo clip, which comes from an entire sitcom season that was created by the Office of Undergraduate Research at Northwestern University called Grant Man. They also have a project planner available in the SAGE Research Methods database that walks you step by step through the steps of writing a lit review. I'm trying to load that on my screen. I don't see it. There it goes. So you can see each of these is a separate section that you can expand to answer the frequently asked question and get some advice. Especially when you're trying to figure out departmental norms, like how many sources or how long does it need to be, looking at models of other people's dissertations can help. So dissertations will come up in the main library quick search box, but there are also so many other types of information in that database that they can get buried. UNLV has access to 2 dissertation databases, one that's just UNLV dissertations, and the other that's dissertations from around the world. I'm going to bring up and open the UNLV only one. I could certainly search for a topic or a department in the main search box, but because every dissertation in this collection has been labeled with the department, the advisor, the degree being offered, I can also use an advanced search, using the advanced search form, to bring up a list of all the dissertations done in a specific program at UNLV. I could look up all the dissertations by a particular advisor at UNLV, or I could do a search for the degree specifically and see, are there social workers out there? Do we have people with the MSW program? Let's see if that will bring some up. So this is all of the MSW dissertations done at UNLV. I can use the date range slider to see just maybe more recent ones. And then I can click on the preview to bring up a particular dissertation and take a look at their lit review section. These, of course, can also be searched by topic if you're interested in searching by topic. So you have all of the previous dissertations done at UNLV available at your fingertips. You can also look at dissertations done at other universities by choosing the dissertations and theses option on the list that doesn't say UNLV specifically. So it's nice to know, I think, that those are readily available for you. It's also not uncommon for folks to publish a version of their literature review as a standard standalone piece of scholarship. Using published review articles can be a very effective way to start mapping out key subfields or niches and learning whose work is influential and whose is highly criticized. These essays sometimes begin as literature reviews and dissertations, so these authors will have made the same kinds of decisions you will be making about selecting works that set up the need or value of their own research interest. The annual review reports database compiles published lit reviews in the sciences and social sciences. I can do a quick review in, I'll do a quick search for gun control in annual reviews, and you can see, maybe you can see, maybe not, that there are several disciplines. Law is criminology, and law and public health are all represented in here. When I bring up a specific review, click over to the full text, you can see that it looks very much like a synthesis of literature that you would see in a dissertation, and there will be links that will take you to the items that are being cited, or citations for the items that are being cited. The Compass journals are more oriented toward humanities and publish topic-focused narrative essays. There's a Compass journal for sociology, for geography, and social psychology. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip doing a search in there. I found a wonderful example about underwater hotels. Someone had done a really extensive academic literature review about the prospects for future underwater hotels. And you could see all the subcategories that they focused on, like history or cultural heritage, tourist experiences, and architecture. Like the annual reports, the reference list will link you to the articles and books that are being cited. You could never construct a search string to bring back the variety of items that you will find in a published review essay. The underwater hotel article included things like classical Greek literature. There's no database that's going to have all of those things indexed in a way that you'll find all those things. What you're really benefiting from is the work of the scholar who wrote the review in contextualizing and classifying the scholarship that they're reporting on. The Oxford Bibliography series, mainly humanities focused. I do have an example from social work that I will bring up. This is a bibliography from 2024. It lists introductory works, and then if you maybe you can see the categories, they list a bunch of different subcategories and topics: books on assisting people experiencing homelessness, policy recommendations for homelessness, addressing homelessness around subpopulations, and then they break it down to different subpopulations. So the annotated bibliography is more of a summary, and it isn't doing all of the intellectual work that you would see in a formal lit review. But they're super valuable as a reference tool, one, to wrap your mind around the kind of work and the categories of work that has been done and where there may be research gaps. For any of these, if I find something that I would want to find in my library, I can use the Find in Your Library link, and that does an automatic lookup in the UNLV catalog to connect me to the item that's being cited. So these published review essays are not sources I would expect you to actually include in your lit review, because they're not answering a research question or reporting the results of a new experiment. They're organizing and summarizing and synthesizing recent work around a topic, so models for you. They're worth knowing about because they will tell you about the trends or niches or research clusters, and these groupings will end up informing how you position your work. You may even want to cite them at some point in your dissertation. And to go back to our research as a conversation metaphor, they can help you figure out which party guests you want to learn from, or which to challenge, or which to just avoid. But like textbooks or encyclopedia entries or even the deepest and most insightful TikTok, they are a tertiary source of information, and your literature review really needs to focus on original research in academic publications. So journal articles for sure, maybe books or book chapters depending on your field, possibly gray literature from reports from government agencies or think tanks for folks who are in public policy. Your literature review will identify the niche that your research question will add to the body of knowledge for. With some constraints depending on your field, you have the power to decide which scholars or communities you want your work to be in dialogue with. So think of the stereotypical movie trailer, right? In a world where, and then there's some obvious problem. One person or one man or one woman had a quest or a solution. Key function of your lit review is to kind of be the trailer for your dissertation, right? To establish the setting where your research project is the hero, doing something essential or creative or new and against the grain. So your process will be to read a lot of abstracts, sort them into piles reflecting their relationship to whatever concepts you select, and then figure out how you're going to decide which articles are keepers. Your discipline may dictate how transparent and objective your criteria for picking the keepers will be. In some disciplines, there are very specific procedures set up in order to produce a consistent, transparent, and reproducible kind of review. These are very important in the health sciences, but increasingly we're seeing adaptations of these methods being used in social work and education. So evidence synthesis provides a rigorous and transparent knowledge base for translating research into decisions. So when someone makes a recommendation, it has research to back it up, and not just from a single study, but from a conclusion that has been affirmed by multiple studies that look at different angles of the problem. Systematic reviews provide the evidence base in evidence-based policy or evidence-based medicine. Evidence synthesis uses explicit and transparent methodology in the formation of the questions that they address. The reviewer has to document their work carefully to show how studies are identified, selected, appraised, and analyzed. They have to establish a system to evaluate the strength of evidence that's being assessed in order to answer the question that's being posed. Evidence synthesis includes many different review types. Systematic reviews is the most well-known. Now, in the health sciences, published systematic reviews follow a very specific protocol that has lots of rules about how to compose a research question and where and how and by whom research is searched and screened. To do it correctly requires a group of reviewers who decide on criteria and evaluate the literature independently, and then they compare notes. Librarians who work on systematic reviews need weeks of training on using the PRISMA guidelines, which I have not had, but which several of other UNLV's other subject librarians do have. Other disciplines have adapted some of the principles to produce structured literature reviews. So if you have been asked to do a systematic review on your own as a section of a dissertation, you're probably working with a modified framework for your field. You can connect with Susie or Samantha or Sue or Zan, and they will have a better grasp on the rules that you need to follow. A caveat is if you just Google how to do a systematic review, you'll get advice on the health sciences official PRISMA method, and that will be way more elaborate than what you're likely to need. There is a good overview of the formal review processes on a website created at Temple University that is linked on the guide for this workshop. It's down at the bottom in other guides with lit review advice. So one way I hope to make myself useful today is coming up with a strategy for you to search the literature, or persuade you to come up with a strategy to search the literature. There are lots of ways to get an understanding of what's going on in a field, including going to conferences, using community online forums hosted by professional organizations, and talking with your committee members. But the most important one for your dissertation is the most traditional, and that is reading what is being published in the literature. Your subject librarian is an expert on which publishers and journals and organizations are disseminating important work in the field. Our aim is to make sure that you have access to key conversations in the field. We do that by ordering subscriptions to the databases and journals where they are being published. Your librarian can help you figure out where to search to be sure that you're including all the research, and not just what the Google algorithm chooses to serve to you. We can help you construct a targeted search to retrieve a narrow set of relevant results, or brainstorm to fish with a very big net, a wide net, and find a big variety of items for you to evaluate. We also work a lot with citation data, and we can help you get set up with a personal library tool like RefWorks or Zotero or Mendeley to store and sort your articles. The main library search box on our homepage is useful for a lot of things. It's the only tool available to find books and videos in the library, for example. But because it tries to search across everything in every academic discipline, it's too blunt an instrument for a literature review. You can consult a subject guide on the library website or ask your subject librarian which databases make sense for your specific research question. Google Scholar can also be a great tool to discover relevant research. Just be aware that not every published article will be found in Google, or it might be found in Google one day, it might not be there the next day. Google's like the river, right? It's always flowing and changing and different at every point in time. Also for every user, because the algorithm optimizes what it shows you based on its understanding of your interests. Even among academic databases, some are fantastic at some tasks but may fall short for lit reviews. JSTOR, for example, is amazing at surfacing history scholarship from the past 200 years, but it will not include research published in the most recent 5 years for an awful lot of important journals. So one benefit of choosing a disciplinary database is that they aim to be comprehensive. They're customized for the needs of the fields that they serve. For example, PAIS, the Public Affairs Information Service database, collects scholarship from key journals in political science, geography, and public policy, but also documents from government agencies and think tanks, gray literature, that's relevant to the work of scholars and practitioners. A disciplinary database might include the full text of some journal articles, but it's not at all uncommon for them to have only citations and abstracts for at least some material. The library has built-in shortcuts to try to link you with complete articles whenever possible, and to interlibrary loan options so that you can get a PDF delivered to your email in about 24 hours when full-text linking is not possible. And searches in disciplinary databases are reproducible. They don't generally take things out of disciplinary databases the way Google Scholar or some of the freely online academic searches may sometimes do. So if you do a search at one date, someone 6 months down the line should be able to reproduce that search and get the same results if they use date filters appropriately. So PsycInfo is a good example of a comprehensive disciplinary database. It's administered by the American Psychological Association, which is a key professional organization for psychologists. It collects citations for new articles in recognized peer-reviewed psychology journals, for new books, and for professional literature. It has a global scope, so you'll find citations and abstracts for research done all over the world. And even if the research is not in English, the title and abstract will be translated for you. A disciplinary database will also include specialized filters and tools based on the needs of researchers. So in PsycInfo, the basic search form includes filters for different populations, age groups, and document types, and there are even more options on the advanced search form. Traditionally, human indexers would examine each article and add this metadata to label the relevant methods or age groups. I think today it gets created by a questionnaire that authors will fill out when they submit the article, and in the near future, I expect it will be managed entirely by AI. So I did a search in the PsycInfo database for smell and everyday life. I wanted both terms to show up in my search, so I capitalized the word "and" so that it would function as a Boolean operator. I did find a number of articles about smells in everyday life. When I find one that's going to be useful for me, I can always use there's a folder icon over here on the right. It may look different in different database interfaces, but there's generally some kind of checkbox or way that you can save a group of articles so you can later export them to a citation manager. One of the things that disciplinary databases do is they use what's called a controlled vocabulary, so that there are lots of synonyms that we can come up with for smells, but I don't necessarily want to think of every possible synonym for smells. And there are also broader terms and narrower terms. When I run my search and I look at the subjects that are used to describe it, I can see they've chosen olfactory perception, and then social interaction and social perception are some of the other concepts that are included in this article. So if you find good articles, looking at the way they're described in your disciplinary database may help you identify some of the key concepts in those articles. PsycInfo also has what's called a thesaurus, the thesaurus of psychological index terms. So this defines when they use, under what circumstances, olfactory perception is an appropriate label for a journal article. If I click on the subject, it will run a search for all the articles that have that same subject term. So now I have where before I might have found the word smell in lots of different contexts in articles, now only articles where smell is the main topic show up in my result list. I can also go to the thesaurus to learn more about a particular term and how it's used. So I can put in olfactory perception. In the thesaurus, it shows me they've been using this term for smell since 1967. And then these are some narrower terms related to the smell, the sense of smell. If I wanted to include all of those narrower terms in my search, I could use the explode option. So when I explode a search term, it means it includes all of the narrower terms that are subcategories of the main term. So I can say, add all of those terms to my search using or. Could use another operator if I wanted, but because I want to catch a broad range of all of these options, I will use or, and you can see it starts to generate a search for me up in the search box that is finding all of those narrower terms. If there are terms that I want excluded, I can ask it to do a not search. So maybe I don't want anything having to do with aromatherapy. I just isn't my thing. I can ask it to add not aromatherapy, and it will exclude all of the articles that have the term aromatherapy in it. So I'm going to go back to my folder to return to my article by Professor Lowe here. So I can see when I open up the description of the article, it also shows me other metadata that's been added. It shows me that this is classified as an empirical study, also as a qualitative study. And it tells me that the population being studied here is humans, including both men and women. If I needed to narrow that down if I do a broader search for olfactory perception again, I can go to the advanced search form and say, I just want to see all the other human studies. I don't want to see about dog smell because there are a lot of stories, a lot of articles about smell being studied in dogs. I can say, just show me human populations, no animals, please. I can say, just show me qualitative studies. And if I pick that off the methodology list here, when I run the search, now I have just the population that I'm interested in and just the type of methodology that I'm interested in. So you can play around on the advanced search form on the disciplinary database for your discipline to find things that will work for you. Your librarian will also be delighted if you ask her to help you construct a search there. So some research question frameworks like PICO or SPICE lend themselves to complex search strategies where you develop a list of relevant terms and then combine them into a long search string. These are most effective when you're searching a very large body of literature like PubMed. This is an example diagram from Cornell University's Viticulture and Enology program over in their ag school. Someone has taken a research question about wine, they've broken it down into component concepts, and they're going to use it to search an agriculture database to see if there are any other studies that hit on all 4 components that are of interest to this researcher. Too many search terms can sometimes have unintended consequences, though, and hide relevant research. You've got to remember that your plan is you want to reject a lot of search results after you've skimmed the abstract. So your searching criteria should not be exactly the same as your research question or your screening criteria. And then this is an example of a search string that's a bit looser than the wine one. Instead of trying to get 4 different concepts in there, there's really just one concept, but they've worked out several different possible potential keywords, and they kind of hit all the permutations that will hit. So it can be valuable when you dial in a search string that works for you to repeat a search regularly to catch any new publications that meet your criteria. Most databases will allow you to set up a search alert that notifies you when new items are added. You probably won't be able to use the same search strategy across different databases, though. Even databases that use the same platform like PAIS and PsycInfo will have different fields that are available for you to search within the database. Another option for you, when you find an article that is your perfect article, it's right on the topic, you can pull up a citation for that article in Google Scholar and use their cited by function. That's going to bring up a list of all the other articles in Google Scholar that have listed this particular article in their bibliography. I'm going to skip the video here and move on because I see we're pushing the end of time. So Google Scholar is great for reasons having to do, but for reasons having to do with the economics of information, like paywalls or availability or formatting. It may not include every significant journal in your field. The traditional tool that we use to find out where an article has been cited is the Web of Science, which includes Social Science Citation Index. There's one for Arts and Humanities. There's also a tool that lets people evaluate the relative prestige or significance or importance of journals. So I'll bring up the entry for Dr. Lowe's article in the Web of Science. You can see that it gives me the abstract of the article, but really the key thing from Web of Science is that it shows me here are all of the articles that cite this article. Here are the articles that are cited by this article. It gives me a little bit of a breakdown of how they are used, whether they're being used as background or whether they're being discussed. And it gives me information about the importance of the journal in the field, if it's a very significant journal or if it's a journal that really doesn't see many citations or much traffic. Another option for seeing relationships between papers, there is a website, connectedpapers.com. This is for the first of a couple of freemium startup projects that you may want to explore. It visualizes the relationship between papers. It's a subscription site, so you can see up to 5 graphs per month for free, and then after that, they will hit you up for a $72 a year subscription. But in this case, you can see that work that has been cited more frequently has darker circles and more lines. So it's another way of starting to map out the research that's available. While most databases will let you collect a list of references and save them to your personal account, you will undoubtedly need to add sources that you locate outside that one database. That is why you should consider setting up a free-to-use citation management tool like RefWorks or Zotero or Mendeley to collect or organize your citations. EndNote is another option, although it costs between $100 and $250 to buy the program. They all will easily let you import search results or individual articles into your personal library. And then once in your library, it's easy to add folders or add tags or labels to organize research in ways that make sense for your lit review. My impression is that when you're at the screening stage, Zotero, Mendeley, and RefWorks work really well for letting you read abstracts and sort papers into piles. They're also worth setting up and maintaining to manage your personal library and to automate the formatting of citations and bibliographies. If you're doing a systematic review where you need to very carefully document which search results come from which databases, RefWorks is pretty good for that, but they all will let you export your list of citations to a spreadsheet, which helps if you have a lot of criteria and you need to record which articles meet which criteria. So this is my Zotero account on your screen. I think you see on your screen. I put together I'm working on a small project that has to do with loot boxes in video games. And so I have a group of journal articles published from the last couple of years about loot boxes. And I've got those in a folder in my Zotero account. I also have some concepts that I'm looking for in these articles. So I'm looking for articles where loot box abuse is looked or over reliance on loot boxes, I guess, is linked to depression. I can click on link to depression as a tag and all the articles that I've labeled with that tag will come up. I can unclick the tag and it goes away. I also have some tags that I've set up as icons, so I can mark articles that I know I want to use with a checkbox, articles that I don't want to use with a minus sign, articles that have a poop emoji that aren't going to be useful for me. And Zotero, so Zotero, when I select an article, shows me basic citation information about that article. It would let me generate a bibliographic citation from that article just by right-clicking on it. I can also open up the PDF for that article and I can start making notes about it. So if I'm coding or if I'm applying my evaluation criteria for an article in my lit review, I might highlight a piece of text and say, okay, I want all of the marking when I see an article that is recommending government regulation of loot boxes. So here's one that's proposing federal legislation. I have a note here that I've created that says, it's got my comment here that I can edit. And then it's got my tag that I've added for government regulation. So when I return to my library screen, I can see all of my articles that I've tagged for government regulation. All right. So one of the other things that I like about Zotero is that it's open source. The developers have created a lot of integrations between Zotero and a lot of popular writing and project organizing platforms like Notion and Obsidian. If you use one of those platforms, there are some ways that you can connect those. My librarian colleagues are very skilled at finding, interpreting, and working with complicated sets of rules. That's kind of what we do. So you can come to us with your stickiest in-text citation conundrums or questions about how you cite weird pieces of literature. But if you're using citation management software, it will do most of the heavy lifting of formatting citations while you write and keeping track of the items that you need in your bibliography. Your bibliography is where you'll cite all the work that you mention or that influence your thinking. If you read a source but do not mention or use it, you don't need to cite it, but you can work it in if you do want to acknowledge someone's work. But your bibliography and your literature review should not be identical. Your literature review is carefully targeted. Your bibliography is comprehensive and hits everything that is important in the field. So once you have collected a body of scholarship to analyze and you've screened it by skimming the abstract to zero in on relevant work, you're ready to start synthesizing. Using tags and folders to sort items in a personal library like RefWorks or Zotero is often enough to capture the concepts or the items that you need to label. But if you need one, there are several approaches you can use to develop a synthesis matrix. Basically, you're putting your sources on one axis and listing important qualities for your research question on the other, and then using the grid to record which articles have which qualities. Lots of people use a plain old spreadsheet for this. If you ask around in your department, you can probably find someone who can share an Excel or a Google Sheet template that they like. There's also built-for-purpose systematic review software. Covidence is one such project, but my understanding is that's far too expensive for individual use, and it's intended for labs who can build the costs into their grant. I also tested an approach that uses Notion, which is another freemium online platform that lets you embed lists and databases that you create into web pages. This is what that matrix looked like. So this template was shared by another Notion user, Shay Sharon, for literature reviews. I collect the articles in my Zotero account. It feeds them into this database structure where I can then apply various criteria from a list of tags that I define. So it captured the articles about loot boxes that I had put in, and now I have a spreadsheet where I can enter the discipline, the type of article it is. I can add keywords or tags that I have determined. And it's dynamic. There are a lot of customization options. For example, I have a column here that lists reading status. So if I've reviewed it or I haven't reviewed it, I can indicate that. I can go to the reading status view in this template, and it gives me a list. These are the ones I've reviewed. These are the ones I've not reviewed. These are the ones that had a positive review. So it's another example of a synthesis matrix. There are also a lot of templates and examples that you can find out there, depending on the platform that you're looking to apply them to, whether that's Google Sheets or Excel or something like Notion or Obsidian, a note-taking product. So thank you for sticking around this long. I think this last bit might make the wait worthwhile. So like everyone, I've been experimenting with some of the newly released AI tools, and some of them appear to be able to automate some forms of categorization. I've actually been astonished and stunned by some of the things that they can do. But I also have concerns about some of the scholarship that might be excluded from the searches done by these tools, as well as the accuracy of some of the AI's assessments. Another very practical concern is that these tools will let you try them for free, but they will require a paid subscription for access. They're all startups. They all add and delete features on the fly. They're not at the point yet where they're scaled up to being available for university purchasing. And I think their goal is probably to be purchased by a company like Clarivate or Elsevier and not individually by libraries. You will want to have a conversation with your committee about their expectations around AI and integrity in your discipline. Obviously, an AI tool will never be able to do the intellectual work of showing how articles are connected. You will need to actually review and read the articles. It would be a mistake to include any work in your lit review that you have not read, regardless of whether an AI was involved. The two tools that I've experimented with are Elicit and Consensus. They both let you enter a research question in natural language, and they recommend articles related to the concepts that the AI detects. So that process that we saw with the wine question that was done by a human, the AI has a network of concepts that it has drawn from the abstracts of a collection of scholarly articles. In fact, that's why, so this is what makes Elicit and Consensus different from large language models like ChatGPT. Elicit and Consensus search a data set of citation and abstracts called Semantic Scholar. You can go to the Semantic Scholar website and they have a list of what is included, what is excluded, how often it is updated. Generally speaking, it has summaries for peer-reviewed journal articles from the last 20 years. I don't know how often it is updated, but it is documented on the site. It excludes books entirely. So as a humanities person, that takes away a lot of value for me because a lot of the research in my field is published in books first. But if you're a journal article focused discipline, you may find more utility there. So on the screen is a table from librarian Aaron Tay that compares the data set and the AI techniques that are used by each tool. Notice that the bottom row compares how they work. Some will just show you highlighted extractive snippets of text, so they're not creating any new language, they're just pointing you to a section in the article that answers the question that you've asked. But some of them will use a GPT technology to provide sometimes answers to research questions or summaries of the article, but also tags like it can identify the population, right? Because every study is going to say in their abstract, they'll say what the methodology is, they'll say what the population is, they'll say what the intervention is. The AI turns out to be really good at filling in columns in a matrix. If you want to take all of your articles, line them up in a grid, and then have the AI figure out who's the population being examined in this particular article, that's something it seems like it can do pretty well. Thank you. So I hope that was as eye-opening for you as it was for me. When he added those columns, it was the AI that was extracting from the abstract of each article the limitations and the methodologies and the population characteristics. The Consensus app does not have a column, a grid layout in the same way, but what it does is it tries to quantify how many articles agree with a particular conclusion and how many had different findings. It also draws from the same selection of academic articles. And so I feel like it's useful, and I feel like it's you're not in danger of committing ethical problems because it's really just another tool for pointing you to relevant literature. Elicit can also do some summarizing. They call it synthesizing, but it's not human synthesizing, it's AI synthesizing. I would be very, very careful about using any of that text verbatim for sure. You also will need to talk with your committee about how you will cite work that has been created with the involvement of AI. One last thing, one AI to beware. This is a jarring slide because it's a jarring situation. ChatGPT. Because Illicit and Consensus are trained exclusively to organize published legitimate academic journal articles, it's reasonable for them to be useful in a literature review. Large language models like ChatGPT are not engaging with peer-reviewed scholarship in the same way at all. They predict the likelihood of terms and phrases being found together and being meaningful. So it is well known to librarians that ChatGPT will create, if you ask it to, it will create a totally realistic looking bibliography or literature review or research report, but it may use the real names of real researchers in the field. Terminology in the field will be accurate, but the studies that it's describing, chances are, do not exist and will never have existed. It's grouping the words together because those are very plausible ways that those words are frequently grouped together, but they're not referring to actual existing studies. We have had a lot of situations where librarians have spent a lot of time trying to track down sources for people who have received those tips from ChatGPT, and they just do not exist. So as we wrap up, I'd like to go back to the Menti slide again. I'm happy to take questions. If you know better ways of doing some of the tasks we've discussed, I would love to hear them. I will leave this up for a second, and then we'll jump over to the Menti answer slide and see what you have to say.
Thank you, Priscilla. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording for our Q&A portion here.
Great. Well, thank you.